Sziasztok! Köszöntök mindenkit innen a Libertine Könyvesboltból. Abban a megtiszteltetésben van részem, hogy most először egy világhírű írót köszönhetek itt a könyvesbolt arany kanapéján, Maja Lundét, aki egyenesen Oszlóból, Norvégiából érkezett. Maja Lunde talán legismertebb műve a Méhek története, ezt mi együtt olvastuk a Nincs időm olvasni kihívásban, úgyhogy ezzel fogom kezdeni majd az interjút. Amit érdemes tudni erről a könyvről, hogy ez egy disztópia, egy olyan elképzelt jövőben játszódik, ahol már nincsenek méhek a Föld nevű bolygón. Ez az úgynevezett klímatetralógiájának a része. Ez az első része, de egyébként a részek nem függnek össze nagyon szorosan, viszont mind a klímaváltozásról szól. Tehát az interjút a Méhek történetével kezdem, de egyébként Maja a legújabb könyvének, az Utolsó vadlovaknak a bemutatójára érkezett, és így adódott ez a lehetőségem, hogy találkozzak vele. Maja, thank you for coming. It is my pleasure to have you here in my bookshop in Budapest, in front of my readers community. We read your book, The History of Bees, with my book club, which consists of 50,000 readers in March. And
Fantastic.
many said that this book changed their perspective of bees. How does that make you feel?
Oh, that makes me really grateful to be able to change the way the readers think about something and feel about something. Is of course it's a gift for an author, and I guess it's somehow what you dream of when you write, to communicate like that.
Why specifically bees or insects?
Well, this book, I actually got the idea for this book when I saw a documentary about colony collapse disorder and about the importance of pollinating insects, and it was sort of an epiphany for me, realizing, I mean, I knew they mattered when it comes to pollination. I knew how much insects matter when it comes to food production, but really taking it in, really realizing that these small species are so important for us and that we rely our whole food chain on them, and how much we owe them, really. It was a new thought to me, and also in that documentary I was presented to different people who somehow were working with bees, and I learned about the start of modern beekeeping, and I saw interviews with beekeepers in the United States who had lost all their bees due to colony collapse disorder. And also I saw pictures from China where they started to hand pollinate in the 1980s because they lost all their bees due to use of pesticides. And these three lines were the basis of my story, really. So for me, it was of course the bees, it was the magic of the small insects and all pollinating insects, the wild one as well. But it was also very much the idea for these three people that I wanted to write about. It always starts with the people, you know, the characters. All my books are, I need to have my main characters to be able to write the story.
Mm-hmm. Did it change also your perspective of bees and insects?
Absolutely, because I realized how important they were, and even more, I mean, I knew from beforehand, but you know, taking it in and going out in the garden and suddenly seeing all these small insects buzzing around and doing their important job and made me grateful. And I think working with all these books has made me value nature in another way than I used to. And I've started to look around in another way than before, and seeing nature, taking it in and feeling love for it.
The whole book tells about or addresses the climate problems and the environmentalism. Why is this topic so important to you?
Well, I have always had a strong love for nature. I remember being a small child and sitting in the forest and making up stories about what I saw, about what could live in a tree or under a bush, and it's always been a part of me. And when I was young, I took my bicycle to the forest. I picked flowers and pressed them and made an herbarium. And it's always been a part of me. And I also have a mother who talked a lot with me about environmental issues and nature crisis. So this was part of our sort of dinner conversation when I was little. So it's always been there, and I always knew that climate and environmental issues was, you know, my cause when it came to elections, for example. I always voted for politicians who wanted to really make action. So this is, in Norway we say right where it burns, and this is where it burns for me.
In the epilogue of the History of Bees, you mentioned that you have consulted experts. How that the storyline changed these experts things?
Well, I always work with a lot of consultants for all my books, and I try to be as true to reality as possible. Of course, I lie. I'm an author. I'm a fiction author, but I try to be accurate. And I mean, I write about reality, even though it's fiction. So it's really important to me to be true to reality. And of course, I learned so much from these different consultants, and they usually, I would say that I'm more shaped by reality, by non-fiction books, than by these different kind of experts than I am by other authors. So they always change my story somehow, even though I don't have like specific examples. It's always, you know, all the things I have researched are part of the story somehow.
Your first novel, The History of Bees, talks about our relationship to bees in a future where there aren't bees anymore. The second book, the main issue, The Lack of Water, this is the end of the ocean. And your third book, the newest, The Last Wild Horses, is about connection with animals. Which of them was the most difficult to write emotionally?
Oh, I would say the last one.
Why?
Because it's, I mean, I started to write this book in 2017, and during 2018 we really started to see how the climate is changing. We had the really dry summer of 2018, and it felt like what we have been talking about for so long happened. And still, the politicians didn't do anything. And I guess I felt like we were so many people talking about this, and absolutely nothing happened. And then in 2019, we had the school strikes. We started to see sort of a desperation among young people. And I guess that also made me feel quite dark, because it shouldn't be necessary for our children to march in the streets to make us listen. So, and also I would say the future part of this book, it's set in Norway in 2064, and it's about a woman who is my age. She has sort of my tone of voice, and I try to well, it was really easy to relate to her. She has a teenage daughter. I had a teenage boy when I wrote this, at about the same age, and it was sort of a dark place to be. But what gave me hope, and I think the reason why I was dragged into this story, is the horses, and how we have been able to save them, because it's a true story. Even though my characters are fiction, this story about the horses is actually true, and it shows us, I guess, what we are able of doing if we really want to.
Why specific horses? Do you like horses? Have you ever ride?
No, I have in Mongolia actually because this book is set in both Mongolia, Russia, and Norway, and Germany as well. I have when I did research for the book, but I have never really been very fond of horses. I think they're kind of scary. They're very big and, you know, a bit wild. Yes. But I heard the story about these specific horses, the Taki or Przewalski horse, in France in 2015. That was before actually the history of bees was published, even in Norway. And I saw the horses and I was told their story. And these horses, they were thought to be extinct, and then they were rediscovered in Mongolia in the 1880s, and they were taken to zoos and nature reserves in Europe, and then they were actually extinct in Mongolia. And during the Second World War and the year after, there were almost no horses left. So, I mean, they were given up as a species. But there were, a few really hardworking, passionate souls who, from only 13 individuals, managed to raise the race again. So, after the war, and then these horses were taken back to Mongolia and reintroduced in the 1990s. And when I saw, and today there are a couple of thousand horses in the world, and they all come from only 13 individuals. And this story I thought was, when I heard it and when I saw these beautiful animals who are completely wild, they can't be tamed. You know, we can't use them for anything. They're no real value for people because you can't use it in farming, you can't use them you can't ride them. They're only here because they deserve to be here as well. And they're here because a few people decided to save them. And I think that's really beautiful, and it tells us a lot about us, about what we are able to do if we want to. Because the human being, Homo sapiens, we are actually the only species on this planet that are able to decide to save another species, just because it deserves to be here as well. So I thought that was really beautiful, and actually that story gave me hope when I wrote. I didn't realize why I was so fascinated by this story when I first heard it, but after writing for a while I realized this is it. It's actually a story of hope.
It's important. We can read 3 books from the climate quartet. Sorry, why decided that to write climate quartet, and why quartets?
Well, when I wrote the history of bees, in the beginning I thought it would be a standalone, and I actually started to write something completely different, but or had ideas at least for something completely different. But starting to write about man and nature was like opening a door into so many other stories, and I realized I wasn't done. And I had so many other ideas to books I wanted to write, and I had ideas for me can sometimes be like an image. For example, the story of Blue started with one image in my head of a young man walking alone in a drought-ridden landscape, and then he finds a boat on land, and that was all I knew. It was him. It was in the near future in a very dry land, and then in southern Europe, and it was this boat. And I started to ask what has happened to him, and what's with this boat? Why is he alone? After a while I realized he had his little daughter with him. And the second image was of an elderly woman standing by a waterfall in Norway today, being really angry and passionate about the waterfall, and I realized this waterfall is part of her story. It's part of who she is, and I asked myself, why is she so angry? I wanted to know more about her. And these two images, I didn't realize in the beginning that they were actually part of the same story. But then after a while, I saw that this is about water. Water is what runs through both of these stories. And I realized it was her boat that he found. So this is how Blue started. And of course, the horses I saw before even the history of bees was even published. And I knew I immediately knew I wanted to write this book. I even remember whispering to my husband, this is a novel. So, and I had several other stories as well, but I quite soon realized it had to be 4 books, because I saw how all these stories are fit together. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle with a lot of pieces. And I knew how it would end. So in the 4th book, that is now recently been published in Norway, I finally was able to write that ending. And I knew it would end at Spitsbergen. And I knew that in the 4th book, we would meet Tao again.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
And I knew also that her storyline would be intertwined with Louise, which we meet in both Blue and The Last Wild Horse.
It's a big universe. So
yes, so this is one universe, and it's actually one story with a lot of pieces, but you can definitely read them as standalone, so you don't have to start with the history of bees. You can start with whatever book you want to, really.
It's very interesting. Yes, you have already finished the 4th. I saw the Instagram that you posted a photo when you signed the book in Norway, but unfortunately we can't read in Hungarian and can't read in English. So please tell about a little bit insight of that book.
Yes, it's called The Dream of a Tree, and it's set in Spitsbergen, Longyearbyen, which is the town further north in well, the northest you said that, the most in the world. It's very close to the North Pole, and it's set in the future, and it's about plants and seed and tree and everything that grows. In Longyearbyen they have the global seed vault. Inside a mountain you have a vault filled with seed from all over the world, from Hungary as well. So it's sort of a treasure, and I have well, in my story it works as a treasure as well in the mountain, and it's set. And when the book is starting, we meet Tao, and she's actually on her way to Spitsbergen to get the seed and to try to find them. And it's about a family that lives in this small society in Longyearbyen, and they try to protect the seed. So it's and it's called The Dream of a Tree because in Spitsbergen there are no trees. Up north there are no trees at all, nowhere to hide. And the main character, Tommy, who is 18 years old, he's dreaming of trees. He wants to see a living tree once, and to be walking in the forest is sort of a dream for him. So yes, and it's about plants, seed, everything that grows, everything that makes, you know, the world green.
After 4 novels about the climate problems and environmentalism, what does the future look like in your opinion?
Well, I've been doing so much research when I wrote these novels, and I can only rest on what the scientists say, and they tell us that we are already looking at least 1.5 degrees global warming. That's unstoppable now, which will be hard. So the climate changes are definitely here. But we can still stop it from getting even hotter, because 2 degrees is really much worse, and 2.5 even more terrible. So we will have climate changes, no question about it, and it will be hard, but we are still able to do something. So I hope the future will not be like the one I describe in my books. And also, this is of course about nature, which is really just as important as climate. We have a nature crisis in the world right now. There are so many species on the threshold of extinction because of us. Was just published today a new report that shows us that the number of wild animals in this world is falling, so it's going so fast towards the bottom, and we are making this planet so hard for everyone that we share it with. So this is something really, an important topic to me, that we start to see all the other species that we share this planet with, and that we start to think that they deserve to be here as well. They're not here just as tools to us. They have their own value, and we should start taking better care of them. And we are the strongest species on this planet, and in that strength lies great responsibility. And we should start to take that responsibility and not only think about ourselves, but this beautiful nature that we are surrounded with. Take better care of it.
Yes. Sorry, in an interview you said, my interest for these topics comes from my own anxiety. What makes you most anxious?
I would say yes, that the stories evolve from my anxiety of the future of my children, even the future we will live in. We will see these changes as well in our lifetime, and I think that of course climate changes are really scary, but also the nature collapse that we are seeing is something that scares me a lot. It's both the sorrow, because we lose so much wonderful nature that makes this planet so amazing, and also it's the collapse will do a lot with us as people. There's a Norwegian author who is also a biologist who says that we live on the shoulders of nature. And that is so right. If we destroy more nature, that will be a huge issue for us as well. The nature is what we are eating. All our medicine, all our resources somehow come from living nature. So that really scares me as well.
And writing is overcome these anxieties?
For me, yes. I think, and it's been hard to see. While I was writing, it was hard to see it, but now looking back at these four books and seeing what I have tried to do all the time is actually, it is that. It's part of, it's a way to deal with my own anxiety. And I have realized that there are two questions that I have asked again and again without really having the answers. But these are the two questions that these books sort of center around. And the first is, how come we are the species on this planet that really changed it? We have changed this world fundamentally. We have even made a new geological age, which is called Anthropocene. gone from Holocene to Anthropocene, so it's a new age because of us, because we have changed the climate. And the second question is, do we have in it to make up for our mistakes? Are we even able of, you know, making this world a better place for the people that come after us and the other species that come after us, the children of all species, not only our own? And I don't have the answer, but I have tried to. I think these books are a search for hope, and I mean, I'm quite often told they are gloomy, they are dark, but they are also, for me, very much a search for hope. And especially the two last ones, I would say, and to find hope in us. And we do know that we are fantastic at communication. We are, I mean, books. Which other species can write books? We are able to share our love in words, and that's wonderful. I mean, so I try to really find those threats in us that will be helpful and to the values that might make the world better, maybe, if we use them. And for me, some of the answers, I guess, are in our ability to show love, our ability to communicate and adapt, like we have shown now during the corona pandemic, for example. So on my good days, I have hope. I usually say I'm pessimistic every second day and optimistic every second day. Yes.
Today is a good day.
Yes, hopefully, yeah.
Which is very interesting for me that in your two books we follow three different timelines, three different perspectives, and in your this book we follow two different timelines and two different perspectives. Why did you choose these structures in your writing?
It was always, you know, the story that chose for me. So it was, like I said, the history of bees started with this documentary, and it started. I got the idea for the three different characters from day one, and it came from, you know, seeing an introduction to the start of modern beekeeping, and from seeing interviews with beekeepers who lost everything due to the colony collapse disorder, and from China that already have to hand pollinate. So the story was really just there, and from the last wild horses, I mean, the story of the horses gave the structure. So the structure comes from the story of the horses. And from Blue as well, really. It was just these two images, yes. And also I would say this is actually a book with three different storylines as well, because 1/3 of it is the past, with because we look back. Yes. And learn about the backstory of one of the characters.
Yes, so love the three structure.
Yes, yes. So it's always about being true to the stories and being true to the characters, and then I feel like the structure sort of gives itself.
We can read three novels in Hungarian. You wrote 3 and 4 fantastic novels, but you wrote 2 children's books which we can't read in Hungarian. One of my favorites is The Snow Sister,
yes,
and Lily and the Sunkeeper, which is the newest in Hungary. Which is harder to you, write novels or children's books?
I would say it's hard and fun in different and the same ways, which was sort of vague answer, I guess. But I usually try not to think too much about the target group. I hate that word, actually. I try to think about the character that I'm writing about and to be true to the character. So if it's hard, it's always related to the story. It hasn't anything to do with whether the book is placed in the children part of the bookstore or in the adult part of the bookstore. And of course, these books are so research demanding, and they are really long.
Yes.
And so it's hard work, really hard work. Yes. And there are almost no pages in these books that haven't somehow been demanded some kind of research. And these books, which I call all ages, because I know that there are a lot of adult readers who love them as well. Research is not a big part of the process, so it's more about being on the inside of the story and being true to the child I'm writing about. For me, I don't think about, when I write books that I know will be sold as children books, I usually think that I would have to love them as an adult reader as well. So I really think about them as all ages. And the reason why they turn out to be children books, I think, is because I write from a child perspective, a child's point of view. And that, of course, does something with the language and with the story. And that's why they end up being children books, I think.
Where did you get the inspiration from for the Snow Sister? Because this is my favorite.
Well, I always loved Christmas, and I knew from a long time ago that I wanted to write a Christmas book, and that I wanted it to be like a Christmas calendar that you can read one chapter every day. So I had that idea for years. And I also, part of the idea was a large house, a wonderful house, a Christmas house. And the second thing I knew was that I wanted it to be about a girl that was sort of a mixture of Pippi Longstocking and Anne of Green Gables. I knew I had the idea for this girl from a very long time back. And when I started to sort of dig in the material, I realized that the book was actually about the boy, and I realized quite early that he had lost his sister. That this was not only a story about, Christmas wonders, but also about emotions that we have around Christmas, because Christmas is a time of year that make every emotion, not only the good ones, but also the bad ones, stronger. And when you lose someone and when you live with loss, that feeling of loss will be even stronger at Christmas. So I think for a lot of us, Christmas is not only a time with, fantastic feelings and warmth and pleasures and gifts, but it's also a time to think and to miss. And there are no evening where that empty chair around the table is more visible than on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
So that was why this story also became quite heavy, because Christmas is also heavy. When you have light, you also have darkness.
Yes.
But it's a happy ending, of course.
Yes, because it's children books.
It's a children book, and it would be for adults as well, I think. Yeah.
Yes. A little bit back to the history of bees. Rumors are that Hollywood have already bought cinemas rights it is true, and how does this make you feel?
I can't say. There are things happening with this material, and but it's more talk about the TV series. But I can't say that we're still in process, so I can't really say anything more. And I'm also working on the Snow Sister as a film, actually.
Oh, really?
Yes. So, but it's still not official, so I can't say that much more. No problem.
But in Norway, in a theater, it's being prepared or being played. The History of Bees and maybe the Snow Sister.
The Snow Sister will premiere in theater next Saturday. Yes.
And how involved are you in these productions?
The Snow Sister, I wrote the theater play, the script, so I've been very involved. And I did not with the History of Bees, but I read a lot of versions and commented, and I was pretty involved in that one too.
And it was good to
it was wonderful.
Look in the stage?
Yes, it was really wonderful, but it was played during the pandemic, so unfortunately they didn't have all the they couldn't play it for long. So hopefully someone will pick it up later and will make more scene productions out of it. I love that, with making adaptations of books, that you give them a new and different kind of life, and you sort of deepens them, and you have other perspectives when you take the book into another form. And so much happens when you do that, which is really interesting, and it's really just so much fun, I think, to see your book played out, whether it's in a film or it's on stage.
It's fantastic. And maybe we have to talk about the books, because we are in a bookshop, and I think you probably love to read. Which are your favorite books and why?
Oh, there are so many. From my childhood, I loved Astrid Lindgren, The Brother Lionheart, for example. It was a really important book to me, and still is one of the most beautiful books I ever read. And Anne of Green Gable, as I mentioned, was one of my favorites as well. And today I read so much and so many different authors, but I would say that and when I do research for my books, I usually I don't seek inspiration from other. I don't try to be like other authors. I try to do my own thing. But I seek inspiration in texts that are from the timelines I write about, for example. So when I wrote The History of Bees, I read Dickens to write about English in the past, now England in the past. And the History of Bees, The Last Wild Horses, I read Tolstoy because this book is partly set in Russia in the 1880s, and there's no other author who does that better than Tolstoy.
Yes.
And also for me, non-fiction is really important. So I would say that a book like The Sixth Extinction of Elizabeth Colbert it was really important to me.
It's nice. Do you prefer physical books or maybe e-books?
No, I definitely prefer physical books, yes. And I love to, with a physical book, to be able to not use your screen, because I feel like so much of my time goes, I'm using a screen all the time, whether it's writing on my computer or using my cell phone or watching TV. So reading is sort of a break from the screens, and you can only do that with a physical book. I don't know if audiobooks are very popular here. They are in Norway, but I don't like audiobooks either. I like to read and to hear, my own voice in my head instead of a reader's voice.
Nowadays, people say that people don't read anymore. What do you think about it? And what happened in Norway?
In Norway, Norwegian children and young adults are the most heavy screen users in Europe. They spend more time online and using cell phones and TV and computers than any other European children, which is that really worries me a lot. And we see how their reading abilities goes down. It's terrible on many levels. First of all, reading, you know, makes you use your imagination. It makes you use your empathy, and it develops the brain. And of course, it prepares them for studying later. When they come to university, they have to read long books, heavy books. And also we know that children who read a lot, they are usually are better prepared for working life and usually have a better career than that children that don't read. So and also with us, you know, with adults, it's really it worries me that we read less and less. That reading seems to be something that people do in their holidays, but don't have as a daily routine anymore. Actually, reading a novel makes you relax in the same way as meditation. And if it's something we need right now with, you know, all the input we get all the time, it's this way of relaxing and moving into someone else's mind, as you do when you read a novel, and another world, and being active. Because when you watch something on a screen or you listen, your brain is not activated the same way as when you read. So every kind of reading, you know, like you do, clubs, or all the ways we can make people, both children and adults, read more, I welcome warmly. We really need it, and we need to continue to read, and we need to talk about reading, and we also need to talk about ways to structure ourselves to read. And I think, you know, for most of us, it's about putting your cell phone away from you. So if you have to walk to get it, it will be easier to concentrate on your book. All these small things. And that goes for both children and adults.
Yes, I'm laughing because I always said the same.
Yes.
Meditation and focus is very important, so thanks your voice. My last question, okay. A few years ago you came to Budapest. Have you got something, have you got some good memories or stories for Budapest?
Oh wow, I've been here earlier as well. So I guess my best story was when I was here in 1998, which is a long time ago.
Yes, really? 1998?
I was, yes, me and my...
and this is your second time in Budapest?
Oh, this is my... No, I've been here with work. I think this is my fourth or fifth time in Budapest, yes. Oh. But when I was here for the first time in 1998, I was here with the man who is now my husband. And we were very young and in love. And we were on an interrail, a train holiday. And we had only planned to be here for maybe 3 nights. But we liked it so much, so we actually stayed for a week. And it was, we lived in, I mean, when you are young, you accept the strangest hotel rooms, but we lived in a really scruffy room and dirty and everything, but it was just super romantic, and we couldn't get enough of the city. And you know, we went swimming in the Gellert bath, and we went bicycling on the island, and we just loved it.
Good memories.
Yes, it's actually one of my most romantic memories. It's from Budapest, so this city definitely has a special place in my heart.
Thank you, Maja. Thank you your voice. Thank you your novel. Thank you your time. If you don't mind, please sign your books.
Of course.
To us.
I'd love to.
And thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Köszi szépen, hogy megnéztétek ezt az interjút, köszönjük, hogy velünk tartottatok, reméljük, hogy tetszett. Ha nem iratkoztatok még fel a csatornára, akkor tegyétek meg, és legalább ennyire fontos, hogy olvassátok Maja Lunde könyveit. A méhek történetét tehát együtt olvastuk a Nincs időm olvasni kihívásban, de Maja most azért érkezett Magyarországra, mert az Utolsó, vadlovak című könyvét lefordította Patad Bence, aki a többi könyvét is fordította, és most már ezt is olvashatjuk magyarul. Úgyhogy olvassatok Maja Lundét és minden mást is. Sziasztok!